Imagine for a moment a bustling city. But instead of skyscrapers, think hexagonal cones. Instead of cars, tiny, fuzzy bees. And these ingenious architects, they're not just building with wax and honey, they're fortifying their homes with a truly remarkable sticky substance. It's often called bee glue, but its real name is far more ancient and, as we'll discover, really quite powerful. Propolis. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a stack of recent research and, well, some pretty comprehensive reviews about this incredible natural product. Our mission is to unpack its rich history, its surprising, wildly complex composition, and its astonishing array of health benefits. I mean, from fighting off notorious superbugs to even aiding in the challenging landscape of cancer treatment. This deep dive is designed as a shortcut for you, our listener, to become genuinely well-informed about propolis, moving beyond just general knowledge to truly understand what makes it, as the research puts it, a multifaceted, natural product with a broad spectrum of biological activities.
It's an exciting journey, definitely, because the science genuinely backs up what traditional medicine has, suggested for centuries. When you actually look at the mechanisms, it becomes really clear why it's been so valued across different cultures and times.
Okay, so let's unpack this right from the beginning then. The name itself, propolis, you mentioned it's ancient. It's actually a huge clue to its original purpose, isn't it?
Absolutely. It comes straight from ancient Greek. You have pro, which means in front of or at the entrance to, and polis, meaning city or community.
So literally in front of the city, which for bees, their city is the hive.
Exactly. It directly signals its primary role in hive protection and defense. It's the gatekeeper, the sealant, the defender, all rolled into one sticky substance.
It's a fantastic piece of etymology, and it really reflects how the bees behave, how they actually use it. Can you describe that process a bit more? How do they collect and make this stuff?
Sure. It's quite a fascinating process. Honeybees, specifically the foragers, meticulously collect these unique, sticky resins from various plant sources. Think tree buds, sap flows, maybe other plant exudates, depending on what's available locally.
So they're basically harvesting plant medicine.
In a way, yes. They bring this raw resinous material back to the hive. But it's not propolis just yet. They then process it, they chew it, mix it with their own salivary enzymes, add some beeswax, and various other secretions.
Ah, so it's a bee-made concoction, not just raw plant resin.
Precisely. It's this blend that becomes propolis. And the primary reason for all this laborious collection and processing is, indeed, hive maintenance and defense. Think of it as their all-natural, all-purpose construction material and, crucially, sanitation agent.
Construction and sanitation. How so?
Well, they use it to seal openings and cracks in the hive. Anything smaller than their bee space, they'll often fill with propolis to keep out drafts, rain, and potential invaders like ants or other insects. They also use it to smooth the internal walls of the hive, creating a more uniform surface. And maybe most importantly, they use it to protect against predators and adverse weather, effectively maintaining a remarkably sterile environment inside the hive.
Sterile, like antiseptic.
Very much so. They'll even use it to mummify intruders that are too large to remove, like a mouse that might have gotten in. They sting it to death and then encase it in propolis to prevent decay and the spread of bacteria within the hive. It creates this kind of antiseptic fortress.
Wow, that's incredible. Mummification. Nature is metal sometimes. Okay, so what's truly mind-blowing about propolis, you touched on this, is that it isn't a single uniform substance. You mentioned collecting resin from different sources. Does that mean its composition can vary wildly?
Oh, absolutely. Wildly is a good word for it. Think of it like a natural fingerprint, unique to its specific origin. The research is very clear on this. Its composition, and therefore its properties, varies depending on plant source, season of harvest, geography, type of bee flora, climate, and even the honeybee species at the site of collection.
That's a lot of variables.
It is. And it explains why we find so many different types of propolis around the world. You hear about Brazilian green propolis, which comes largely from Baccharis dracunculifolia. Then there's red propolis, often from mangrove regions, deriving its color and properties from plants like Dalbergia icastiphyllum.
And brown, European, Turkish?
Exactly. European propolis often relies heavily on poplar tree resins. Turkish propolis again depends on the local flora. Each type has its own distinct profile of active compounds. The color, the texture, the smell, and critically, the biological activity can all shift quite dramatically based on these factors.
So it's not like buying vitamin C where you know exactly what you're getting molecule-wise.
Not at all. This variability is actually a key challenge, but also a fascinating area of research. Scientists are working hard to understand how these different compositions relate to specific health benefits, trying to standardize extracts or identify the most potent types for certain applications.
Okay, so let's dive into that composition, the fingerprint, as you called it. When we look at the specific compounds, it sounds like an absolute treasure trove, almost overwhelmingly complex.
It truly is. The numbers are staggering. Over 1,000 different molecules have been identified in various propolis samples. It's a chemical library created by bees.
1,000. So what are the main players? What gives it its punch?
Generally speaking, the main active players are identified as flavonoids. These are plant compounds you hear about a lot, known for their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits. Things like quercetin, penosembrin, galangin. Then you have aromatic acids and phenolic acids, like caffeic acid and ferulic acid. And their esters, a particularly famous one being caffeic acid phenethyl ester, or KP, which pops up again and again in research for its potency. These are also powerful plant compounds with diverse biological activities.
Right, CAPE. I've seen that mentioned quite a bit.
Yes, it's a significant one. Now, while these phenolic compounds often make up the bulk, maybe 50% or more, there are other important components. About 30% might be waxes, 10% essential oils, and aromatic compounds.
The smell.
Exactly. The terpenoids, which fall into that essential oil category, are largely responsible for its distinctive aroma. While they might only be around 10% by weight, they're crucial. They not only contribute to the characteristic smell, but also help differentiate between propolis types and likely contribute to the overall biological effect.
So even the minor components matter.
Absolutely. The sheer complexity, with potentially hundreds or even over 1,000 molecules present in a single sample, makes pinpointing a single active ingredient incredibly difficult. It strongly suggests a powerful synergistic effect.
Synergy, meaning the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Precisely. These compounds likely work better together, amplifying each other's effects, than any single one could alone. This complexity is both a challenge for standardization and perhaps the very reason for its broad spectrum of activity.
Okay, so this complex, sticky, variable substance, if we want to tap into this bee magic for human use, how do we actually get these beneficial compounds out of the raw material collected from the hive? What's the best way to process it for, say, supplements or tinctures?
That's a critical step, the extraction process. You need to pull those bioactive compounds out of the waxy matrix. The research consistently indicates that for processing propolis for human consumption, ethanol, essentially alcohol, is considered the most suitable and effective solvent.
Just regular alcohol.
Well, specifically ethanol, and usually at a concentration of around 70–75%. That specific concentration seems to strike the best balance for pulling out a broad range of those beneficial phenolic compounds and flavonoids while leaving behind some of the less desirable waxy components. Water extracts exist too, but they tend to capture a different profile of compounds, often less of the key phenolics.
And I imagine science isn't just sticking to the old ways of soaking it in alcohol. Are there newer, maybe more efficient or greener methods emerging?
Precisely. Traditional maceration in ethanol works, but it can be slow and might require larger volumes of solvent. Modern science has introduced more environmentally friendly and efficient extraction techniques. Methods like ultrasonic-assisted extraction, usually called UAE, are becoming popular. This uses high-frequency sound waves to create cavitation bubbles in the solvent, which collapse near the propolis material and essentially blast the compounds out more quickly and efficiently.
Faster and using less energy, presumably.
Generally, yes. And another common one is microwave-assisted extraction, or MAE. This uses microwave energy to heat the solvent and the propolis matrix rapidly and uniformly, which accelerates the extraction process dramatically. These newer approaches often achieve higher yields of the target compounds in much shorter times, minutes, versus hours or days for traditional methods. They can significantly reduce energy consumption and solvent use. And crucially, the shorter exposure time and often lower temperatures can help to preserve some of the more sensitive, beneficial compounds that might otherwise degrade with prolonged heat or processing.
So potentially a more potent and pure end product for us.
That's the goal. Better efficiency, less environmental impact, and potentially a higher quality extract. It's about optimizing how we capture that complex profile of bee-selected plant power.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, moving from what it is to what it does. Propolis isn't just a building material for bees. It's clearly acting as a powerful natural medicine for the hive and potentially for us. Let's start with its incredible antioxidant capabilities. What does that mean on a cellular level?
It's truly a cellular powerhouse, yes. So our bodies, just through normal metabolism and exposure to environmental stressors like pollution or UV radiation, constantly produce unstable molecules called free radicals or reactive oxygen species, ROS.
The bad guys in cellular health stories.
Pretty much. These free radicals are highly reactive and can damage important cellular components,
Oh.
our DNA, proteins, and especially the fats or lipids that make up our cell membranes. This damage process is called oxidative stress. And specifically, the damage to fats is lipid peroxidation. Oxidative stress is implicated in the aging process and is linked to the development or worsening of many chronic diseases like heart disease, neurodegenerative conditions, and even cancer.
So antioxidants are the protectors.
Exactly. Antioxidants are molecules that can neutralize these free radicals, often by donating an electron to stabilize them, without becoming unstable themselves. Propolis is packed with potent antioxidants. Those flavonoids and phenolic acids we discussed earlier, like quercetin, pinosembrin, galangin, gresanin, caffeic acid, ferulic acid, and especially Cape E, are primarily responsible for this strong antioxidant activity.
How do they work? Just mopping up free radicals.
That's a big part of it, scavenging free radicals directly. But they can also work in other ways, like chelating metal ions, binding to metals like iron and copper, that can trigger free radical production, or boosting our body's own endogenous antioxidant enzyme systems. They essentially provide multiple layers of defense against oxidative damage, protecting our cells.
And you mentioned KP again, caffeic acid phenolphthalein ester. Is that particularly strong?
Yes, KP is often highlighted in studies for its exceptionally strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. It's considered one of the major bioactive components, particularly in propolis types derived from poplar trees, common in Europe and North America.
Does the antioxidant power vary, like the composition?
It does. Different geographical origins show varying levels and types of antioxidant activity, directly reflecting their unique chemical makeup. Brazilian green propolis might have a different antioxidant profile compared to European poplar propolis, for example. This again highlights the complex nature of this natural product and the importance of knowing the source if you're looking for specific benefits.
Okay, so it protects our cells from damage. What about fighting invaders? Its antimicrobial might seem fundamental given its role in the hive. The bees were basically using it as a natural disinfectant, a practice recognized since ancient times. What does modern science say about its power against pathogens like bacteria?
The science absolutely confirms this historical wisdom and the bee's intuition. Propolis exhibits significant antibacterial activity against a wide range of bacteria. A key finding that comes up repeatedly in the research is that propolis often shows stronger activity against gram-positive bacteria compared to gram-negative bacteria.
Okay, gram-positive versus gram-negative. Can you quickly remind us what that difference means and why it matters here?
Sure. It's a fundamental classification in microbiology based on how bacteria react to a staining procedure, which reflects differences in their cell wall structure. Gram-positive bacteria, like Staphylococcus aureus, which causes staph infections, or Streptococcus pyogenes, strep throat, have a thick peptidoglycan cell wall but lack an outer membrane. Gram-negative bacteria, like Escherichia coli, E. coli, or Pseudomonas aeruginosa, have a thinner peptidoglycan layer but possess an additional complex outer membrane made of lipopolysaccharides.
And that outer membrane is the key difference for propolis.
It seems to be. That tough outer membrane on gram-negative bacteria acts as a significant barrier, making it harder for many antimicrobial compounds, including some components of propolis, to penetrate the cell and reach their targets. Gram-positive bacteria, lacking this outer shield, are often more susceptible.
That makes sense. So it's not just about what's in the propolis, but also the specific defenses of the bacteria it's up against. How does propolis actually attack these bacteria once it gets past their defenses, or for the gram-positive?
It's quite sophisticated, employing multiple mechanisms, which probably helps prevent bacteria from easily developing resistance. Studies show it can inhibit nucleic acid synthesis. That means stopping the bacteria from making the DNA and RNA they need to replicate and function.
So stopping them from multiplying.
Exactly. It can also disrupt the bacterial cell membrane potential. The membrane maintains an electrical charge difference, which is vital for energy production and transport. Propolis can mess with that, essentially short-circuiting their power supply. Related to that, it's been shown to reduce ATP production. ATP is the basic energy currency for all cells, including bacteria. If you cut off their energy supply, they can't perform essential functions and eventually die. It can also inhibit bacterial motility, enzyme activity, and biofilm formation in some cases.
Biofilm, that's the slimy stuff bacteria form.
Yes. It's a protective matrix that communities of bacteria create, making them much harder to treat with antibiotics. Propolis showing activity against biofilms is particularly important.
This sounds like a really big deal for modern medicine, especially as we mentioned, considering the frightening rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. What about those superbugs?
Absolutely. The potential of propolis against multi-drug-resistant MBR bacterial strains is one of the most exciting areas of research. Think MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, which is a major problem in hospitals and communities, or VRE, vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus faecium. These are infections that are becoming increasingly difficult, sometimes impossible, to treat with our current arsenal of antibiotics.
And propolis shows activity against them.
Yes, numerous studies have demonstrated that various propolis extracts can inhibit the growth of MRSA, VRE, and other challenging MDR strains in the lab. This ability to combat resistant bacteria is a critical insight and offers hope for new therapeutic strategies.
But maybe not just as a standalone treatment. You mentioned something earlier about synergy.
Right, and this is perhaps even more promising in the short term, the synergistic effect. It's like propolis can be a helper molecule. Research shows that propolis extracts can actually enhance the efficacy of conventional antibiotics when used together.
How does that work?
The mechanisms aren't always fully understood, but propolis might help weaken the bacteria's defenses, making them more susceptible to the antibiotic. For example, it might increase the permeability of the bacterial cell wall or membrane, allowing more antibiotic to get inside. Or it might inhibit bacterial efflux pumps mechanisms bacteria use to pump antibiotics back out of the cell. Studies have shown this synergy with various antibiotics like bacitracin, gentamicin, oxytetracycline, ciprofloxacin, and others against different bacteria, including resistant strains.
So this could mean
Why?
using lower doses of antibiotics, making old antibiotics effective again.
Both are possibilities. It could potentially allow us to use lower, safer doses of antibiotics, reducing side effects. It might help overcome existing resistance mechanisms, effectively restoring the utility of some older drugs. It opens up entirely new strategies for combination therapy to combat the growing crisis of drug resistance. This synergistic effect is potentially a game changer because it means propolis isn't just an alternative. It could be a powerful partner to existing treatments.
That's a really profound thought partnership against resistance. Thinking more practically, where might we see propolis's antibacterial power at work in everyday life already?
You might already be encountering it without realizing it, especially in oral care. Propolis is increasingly used in things like mouthwashes, toothpastes, and even some lozenges or sprays.
Why oral care specifically?
Because the mouth is teeming with bacteria. Propolis helps combat common oral pathogens like Streptococcus mutans, which is a major contributor to dental caries or cavities. It also fights Staphylococcus aureus, Porphyromonas gingivalis, linked to gum disease, and others. So it can potentially help reduce plaque, prevent cavities, and maintain overall oral hygiene by keeping those bacterial populations in check.
Interesting. So it's not just folklore, there's real application there. And you mentioned it doesn't stop at bacteria. Propolis also seems to have surprising antiparasitic and antifungal properties. That's an incredibly broad spectrum.
It is indeed. The bees seem to have equipped themselves with a truly versatile defense system. When we look beyond bacteria, the research gets even more intriguing. For parasites, studies highlight its effect on some quite nasty ones. For instance, Toxoplasma gondii, the parasite that causes toxoplasmosis propolis, has been shown to reduce parasite multiplication in lab studies.
Toxoplasmosis, isn't that the one linked to cats?
That's the one, though it can be contracted in other ways too. Propolis has also shown activity against Trypanosoma cruzi, the parasite responsible for Chagas disease, which is a major health issue in Latin America. In vitro studies show it inhibits parasitic proliferation, and in mouse models it reduced parasitemia, the level of parasites in the blood.
That's significant. Any others?
Yes. Activity has also been reported against Schistosoma mansoni, a type of flatworm causing schistosomiasis, Giardia lamblia, an intestinal parasite, and Trichomonas vaginalis, causing a common sexually transmitted infection. And interestingly, it even helps protect the honeybee itself by combating the notorious parasitic honeybee mite, Varroa destructor, which is a huge threat to bee colonies worldwide.
So it helps the bees fight their own parasites too. And what about fungi? Things like yeast infections.
Yes. On the fungal front, propolis demonstrates notable efficacy against common pathogenic fungi. This includes various Candida species, such as Candida albicans, the most common cause of yeast infections, thrush vaginal yeast infections, but also against increasingly resistant species like Candida glabrata, It's also shown activity against trichosporon species, another type of yeast that can cause infections, particularly in immunocompromised individuals.
How effective is it compared to, say, standard antifungal drugs?
In some studies, its ability to inhibit fungal growth has been found to be comparable to commonly used chemical fungicides or antifungal medications like nystatin or clotrimazole, at least in laboratory settings. Again, the specific effectiveness depends on the propolis type and the fungal strain.
Bacteria, parasites, fungi. It's like a broad spectrum antimicrobial straight from nature. And talk about timely relevance. You mentioned earlier, it even shows antiviral potential, including against SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. That sounds like a pretty strong claim.
It is, and it's definitely a significant area of current research, spurred on by the pandemic, of course. But the antiviral properties of propolis aren't entirely new. It has shown broad antiviral activity in studies against various types of viruses over the years.
Like what other viruses?
Activity has been demonstrated against viruses such as HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, various influenza viruses, canine distemper virus, human rhinoviruses, which cause the common cold, and herpes simplex virus, types 1 and 2, HSV1 and HSV2, the causes of cold sores and genital herpes.
So, a track record against different viral families. What about SARS-CoV-2 specifically? How might it work there?
The research suggests several intriguing potential mechanisms, although much of this is still from cell culture or computational modeling studies. One proposed mechanism is that propolis components might disrupt the virion envelope that's the outer protective layer of the virus, essentially disarming it or making it less stable.
Okay, attacking the virus particle itself.
Possibly. Another key area is blocking viral entry into our host cells. SARS-CoV-2 uses its spike protein to latch onto receptors on our cells, primarily the ACE2 receptor, and it also needs an enzyme called TMPRSS2 to help it fuse with the cell membrane. Some studies suggest that compounds in propolis, like CaPe again, might interfere with this process, either by binding to the viral spike protein or by inhibiting those host cell receptors, ACE2 and TMPRSS2, making it harder for the virus to get inside.
Blocking the doorway, essentially.
That's a good analogy. Furthermore, propolis appears to modulate inflammatory pathways. This is really important because a major part of severe COVID-19 is the excessive inflammatory response, the so-called cytokine storm. Propolis, with its known anti-inflammatory effects, might help dampen this harmful overreaction.
That makes sense, tackling the inflammation side, too. You mentioned formulations.
Yes, what's particularly interesting is that formulating propolis can enhance its effects. Liposomal formulations, where propolis extract is encased in tiny fat bubbles called liposomes, have been developed. This can improve the solubility and delivery of the active compounds into cells. Some in vitro studies using these liposomal formulations have shown enhanced antiviral activity against SARS-CoV-2, with effects reported to be comparable to powerful antiviral drugs like remdesivir in certain experimental setups.
Comparable to remdesivir. That's quite something, even if it's early days research.
It is. Of course, these are mostly lab findings, and translating that into proven clinical effectiveness in humans requires rigorous clinical trials. But the potential mechanisms and preliminary data are certainly compelling and warrant further investigation.
Definitely. Okay, moving beyond infection control, propolis also acts as a powerful agent for healing and immune support. Let's delve into its anti-inflammatory action more deeply. We touched on it with COVID, but how does it work more broadly?
Its anti-inflammatory effects are quite significant and well documented across various models. As we briefly mentioned, propolis has been shown to inhibit key enzymes involved in the inflammatory cascade. Two major ones are cyclooxygenase, or COX, specifically COX2, which is often induced during inflammation, and 5-lipoxygenase, often abbreviated as 5-LO.
Aren't those the targets of common anti-inflammatory drugs like NSAIDs targeting COX?
Exactly. Drugs like ibuprofen or aspirin work by inhibiting COX enzymes. These enzymes, COX and 5-LO, are like the body's little factories for producing pro-inflammatory signaling molecules. COX pathways produce prostaglandins, which contribute to pain, fever, and swelling. The 5-LO pathway produces leukotrienes, which are heavily involved in allergic reactions and asthma. By inhibiting these enzymes, propolis effectively suppresses the biosynthesis of prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and also nitric oxide, another important mediator of inflammation.
So it's acting upstream, stopping the production line.
In part, yes. But it also works further down the line by reducing the levels of several key inflammatory cytokines. These are small proteins that act as messengers in the immune system, essentially shouting inflammation here and recruiting immune cells. Propolis has been shown to reduce levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin-1 beta, IL-1, and interleukin-6, IL-6, These are often chronically elevated in various inflammatory diseases.
Okay, so how does this cellular level anti-inflammatory action connect to real-world conditions or chronic diseases that affect so many people? Where might this be relevant?
It shows promise in several areas, particularly those driven by chronic inflammation. For instance, rheumatoid arthritis, RA. RA is an autoimmune disease characterized by chronic inflammation of the joints. In animal models, specifically mice with induced arthritis, propolis extracts, especially those rich in KP, have demonstrated positive effects, reducing joint swelling, bone erosion, and levels of inflammatory markers by inhibiting specific signaling pathways like NF-key, which is a master regulator of inflammation.
What about in humans with RA?
Human clinical trials have been more limited and have yielded somewhat mixed results so far. Some smaller studies suggested potential benefits in reducing disease activity scores or inflammatory markers, but others haven't shown significant effects compared to placebo. It's complicated because patients are often on multiple potent medications already, and the type of propolis, dose, and duration of treatment likely matter a lot. More research is definitely needed here.
Understandable. What about respiratory conditions? You mentioned leukotrienes and asthma.
Right. Given its ability to inhibit 5-LO and reduce inflammatory cytokines like IL-4, IL-5, and IL-13, which are crucial in allergic inflammation, propolis has shown beneficial effects in models of allergic reactions like asthma. Studies suggest it can reduce airway inflammation, decrease the severity and frequency of attacks, and inhibit the activation of mast cells and basophils, key immune cells that release histamine and other mediators during allergic responses.
And COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Yes, there's interest there too. COPD is characterized by chronic inflammation in the lungs, often due to smoking. Preliminary studies suggest propolis might help by reducing oxidative stress and inflammation in the airways, potentially improving lung function or reducing exacerbations, but again, more robust human trials are needed to confirm these benefits.
It's fascinating that it doesn't just fight off invaders or calm inflammation. It seems to be actually boosting and balancing our defenses overall. You mentioned its impressive immunomodulatory effects earlier, meaning it modulates or influences the immune system. What exactly does that entail?
Precisely. It's not just about suppression, anti-inflammatory, or killing microbes, antimicrobial. Propolis can also enhance or shape immune responses, depending on the context. This is what immunomodulatory means. It adjusts immune function.
So it can ramp things up sometimes.
Yes. For example, it can stimulate innate immunity, which is our body's first line of defense. Studies show it can increase the expression of important pattern recognition receptors, like toll-like receptors, specifically TLR2 and TLR4, on immune cells, like macrophages. Think of these TLRs as the immune system's lookout sensors, crucial for detecting bacterial or viral components.
So it makes the guards more vigilant?
A good way to put it. By activating these receptors, propolis can promote the production of certain pro-inflammatory cytokines, such as IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha initially, and also IL-12, which helps gear up the immune response to fight off an infection effectively. It can enhance macrophagocytic activity, basically, making them better at engulfing and destroying pathogens.
Interesting. So it can be pro-inflammatory in some contexts to fight infection, but anti-inflammatory in others, like chronic disease.
Exactly. That's the essence of modulation. It helps the immune system respond appropriately to the situation. It's not just turning the volume up or down, but helping to tune the orchestra.
And you mentioned acting as an adjuvant in vaccines.
Yes. This is another exciting aspect of its immunomodulatory potential. An adjuvant is something added to a vaccine to help it work better, to elicit a stronger and more durable immune response. Propolis has shown adjuvant potential in animal studies, enhancing both humoral immunity, which involves the production of antibodies that circulate in the blood, and cellular immunity, where specialized immune cells like T cells directly attack infected cells or coordinate the response. This suggests it could potentially be used to make future vaccines more effective.
That's really quite versatile. Let's switch gears slightly to something maybe more traditional sounding. Wound healing. This seems like a natural fit for something that literally acts as bee glue, sealing things up. Is it effective in accelerating recovery?
It absolutely is, and this is one of its most well-established uses, both traditionally and supported by modern science. Propolis has a long history in folk medicine for treating cuts, burns, and sores. And the research explains why it works so well.
What are the mechanisms there?
It works through multiple beneficial mechanisms simultaneously. We've already talked about its antimicrobial properties, which are crucial for preventing infection in a wound. Its anti-inflammatory effects are also vital, as excessive or prolonged inflammation can actually hinder the healing process. Propolis helps by reducing the numbers of certain immune cells, like mast cells and neutrophils, at the wound site later in the healing phase, and inhibiting those inflammatory cytokines, like IL-6, TNSA.
So cleaner and calmer. What else?
Crucially, it actively promotes tissue regeneration. It enhances collagen deposition. Collagen is the main structural protein in our skin and connective tissues, essential for building the scaffolds for new tissue. It stimulates the proliferation and activity of fibroblasts, the cells responsible for producing collagen and other extracellular matrix components. It also promotes angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels needed to bring oxygen and nutrients to the healing tissue, and fosters reepithelialization, which is the process of the outer skin layer growing back over the wound.
So it's speeding up the whole rebuilding process.
Exactly. It seems to orchestrate several key steps in wound repair, leading to faster closure, potentially reduced scarring, and improved tissue quality overall.
Are there any impactful real-world applications of this wound healing power that really stand out in the research? Specific types of wounds?
Two areas where its impact has been particularly studied and looks quite significant are diabetic foot ulcers and burn wounds. These are both notoriously difficult to heal wounds.
Why diabetic foot ulcers specifically?
People with diabetes often have poor circulation and nerve damage, neuropathy, in their feet, making them prone to ulcers that heal very slowly, if at all, and can easily become infected, sometimes leading to amputation. Several clinical studies have investigated topical propolis ointments or creams for these ulcers. The results have been quite promising, showing accelerated healing rates, reduced wound size, and sometimes complete healing within 3 to 7 weeks, which is significantly faster than standard care in some cases.
How does it achieve that in those specific wounds?
By combining its effects, reducing bacterial load, dampening excessive inflammation, decreasing mast cell and neutrophil counts, and importantly, stimulating granulation tissue formation and increasing that crucial collagen production needed to fill the wound defect.
And what about burn wounds?
Burns are another major challenge. Propolis has been compared favorably to standard treatments like silver sulfadiazine cream in several studies, mostly in animal models, but some human ones too. It appears to help by reducing oxidative stress in the damaged tissue, controlling infection, reducing inflammation, and stimulating faster healing through enhanced collagen deposition and quicker epithelial regeneration. Some studies even reported less pain and faster overall recovery time with propolis compared to the conventional treatment.
Outperforming a standard treatment like silver sulfadiazine, that's a powerful endorsement for a natural product in such a serious context.
It is indeed. It highlights the potential for propolis as a valuable tool in wound management, leveraging its multiple beneficial properties simultaneously.
That's quite something. Okay, switching gears again to another major health challenge facing millions, diabetes. Does propolis have a role to play there too?
It appears to, yes. There's growing research exploring its anti-diabetic potential, primarily focusing on type 2 diabetes management. The mechanisms are quite interesting and multifactorial, as you might expect with propolis.
How might it help manage blood sugar?
One key mechanism seems to be the inhibition of certain digestive enzymes, specifically alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. Now, these enzymes are located in your gut and are crucial for breaking down complex carbohydrates from your diet into simpler sugars, like glucose, which are then absorbed into your bloodstream.
So they control how quickly sugar gets into the blood after a meal.
Exactly. By inhibiting these enzymes, propolis can slow down the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. This leads to a slower, lower rise in blood glucose levels after eating, which is beneficial for managing diabetes and potentially preventing blood sugar spikes. Certain prescription diabetes medications actually work through this same mechanism.
Interesting. Are there specific compounds in propolis responsible for this?
Yes, specific flavonoids found in propolis, such as naringin, hesperidin, and apigenin, as well as some phenolic acids, have been identified as potent inhibitors of alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase in laboratory studies.
Beyond just slowing sugar absorption, does it do anything else related to diabetes, like improving insulin sensitivity?
There's evidence suggesting it might. Some studies, mostly in animal models of diabetes, indicate that propolis can improve insulin sensitivity, meaning the body's cells respond better to insulin signal to take up glucose from the blood. It might also have protective effects on the pancreatic beta cells, which are the cells that produce insulin. Plus, its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects are relevant too, as both oxidative stress and chronic inflammation play significant roles in the development and progression of diabetes and its complications.
So potentially helping on multiple fronts: sugar absorption, insulin function, and protecting against related damage.
That seems to be the picture emerging from the research, yes. It suggests propolis could be a useful complementary approach, alongside diet, exercise, and conventional medication for managing blood sugar levels and potentially reducing the risk of diabetic complications. But as always, more human clinical trials are needed to firmly establish its role and optimal use.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, let's talk about the frontier of propolis research, perhaps the most challenging area, its potential role in cancer treatment. Cancer remains, of course, a major global public health concern. And while conventional treatments like chemotherapy and radiotherapy are often life-saving, they frequently come with significant side effects and the daunting challenge of drug resistance. Where does propolis fit into this incredibly complex picture?
That's where propolis enters the conversation as a truly promising, though still largely investigational ally. The research, particularly in preclinical settings, meaning cell culture in vitro and animal models in vivo, is actively exploring its diverse anti-cancer mechanisms.
What kind of mechanisms are we talking about? How might it fight cancer?
It appears to work on multiple levels against cancer cells. Firstly, it has been shown to inhibit cancer cell proliferation, essentially. It can stop or slow down the uncontrolled growth and division that characterizes cancer. Secondly, it can inhibit angiogenesis. Tumors, to grow beyond a tiny size, need to develop their own blood supply to get nutrients and oxygen. Angiogenesis is this process of forming new blood vessels. Propolis, particularly compounds like Ke and artapilin C, prominent in Brazilian green propolis, has shown anti-angiogenic effects, potentially starving the tumor.
Cutting off the supply line.
Exactly. Thirdly, and perhaps most critically for preventing spread, it can inhibit metastasis. Metastasis is the process where cancer cells break away from the primary tumor, travel through the bloodstream or lymphatic system, and form new tumors in distant organs. This is what makes cancer so deadly. Several propolis compounds have demonstrated potential to interfere with various steps in the metastatic cascade, like cell migration and invasion.
Stopping growth, stopping blood supply, stopping spread. What else?
It also stimulates apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. Healthy cells undergo apoptosis when they are damaged or no longer needed, but cancer cells notoriously evade this process, allowing them to survive and multiply indefinitely. Propolis compounds have been shown to trigger apoptosis pathways specifically in cancer cells, while often being less toxic to normal, healthy cells.
That selectivity is key, isn't it? Targeting the cancer cells while sparing normal ones.
It's a crucial aspect and one of the hopes for natural compounds like those in propolis. While chemotherapy often affects rapidly dividing cells throughout the body, leading to side effects, some propolis components appear to have a degree of selective toxicity towards cancer cells, although the exact mechanisms for this selectivity are still being unraveled.
And is this effect broad across different cancer types, or is the research focused on specific ones?
The research indicates efficacy against a surprisingly wide range of human cancer cell lines in laboratory settings. Studies have reported positive effects against cell lines derived from breast, bladder, colon, prostate, ovarian, pancreatic, liver, brain, skin, leukemia, gastric, and lung cancers, among others.
That's a very wide net.
It is. Again, specific phenolic and flavonoid compounds such as Kp, cresin, galangin, quercetin, pinosembrin, and artapilin C are believed to be primarily responsible for this strong anti-cancer activity observed in vitro and in vivo. And, true to propolis's nature, they often seem to act synergistically. The combination of multiple compounds in a whole extract might be more effective than any single isolated compound.
So what does this all mean, practically speaking, for you if you or someone you know is undergoing cancer treatment? It sounds like there might be a role beyond just directly fighting the cancer itself, maybe in supporting the patient through treatment?
Yes, and this is a particularly compelling and potentially more near-term application. Propolis's potential to mitigate the severe and often debilitating side effects of conventional chemotherapy and radiotherapy.
How could it help with that?
These standard treatments, while targeting cancer cells, also damage healthy tissues, leading to intense oxidative stress and inflammation throughout the body. This manifests as side effects like fatigue, nausea, hair loss, weakened immunity, and painful conditions like oral mucositis or peripheral neuropathy. Studies, including some preliminary human trials, show propolis can help counteract this. Its powerful antioxidant properties can reduce treatment-induced oxidative stress, and its anti-inflammatory effects can dampen the surge in pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-1 that contribute to these side effects.
You mentioned oral mucositis specifically. That's the painful mouth sores.
Yes, chemotherapy and radiation to the head and neck area frequently cause severe oral mucositis, making it incredibly painful to eat, drink, or even talk, which can lead to malnutrition and require dose reductions or treatment breaks. Several clinical studies have investigated propolis mouthwashes or oral gels for preventing or reducing the severity of chemo or radiotherapy-induced oral mucositis, with quite positive results reported in many cases. Patients using propolis experience less severe sores, less pain, and faster healing compared to placebo or standard care.
That alone could make a huge difference to someone's quality of life during treatment.
Absolutely. By making these difficult treatments more tolerable, propolis could significantly improve patients' quality of life, help them maintain better nutrition, and potentially allow them to complete their planned treatment course without interruption. Some research even suggests it might enable tolerance of higher, more effective doses of chemotherapy or radiotherapy in certain situations, and there's even some preliminary evidence that it might enhance the therapeutic efficacy of certain anti-cancer agents when used concurrently, essentially acting as a chemo or radiosensitizer for the cancer cells.
Wow, so potentially fewer side effects and maybe boosting the treatment's effectiveness.
That's the hope, and it's an active area of investigation. Of course, it's crucial to emphasize that anyone undergoing cancer treatment should always discuss using any supplements, including propolis, with their oncologist first, as there could be potential interactions with their specific treatments. But the research certainly points towards a valuable supportive role.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. Really, from the tiniest bees meticulously crafting their hive defenses, all the way to potentially addressing some of the biggest challenges in modern human health. We've seen how propolis, this seemingly humble bee glue, transforms in the hands of bees into an incredibly complex natural product.
It really is remarkable, a substance with such a broad spectrum of documented activities: antimicrobial, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory, wound healing, anti-diabetic, and even potential anti-cancer properties.
It's truly multifaceted.
It's a powerful testament to the wisdom embedded in nature and how much there still is to learn from organisms like bees and the plant compounds they select and concentrate. And this isn't just theoretical. Today, propolis is already incorporated into a wide range of paramedical and health products available directly to you.
Right, you can find it in health food stores, pharmacies.
Exactly. Everything from throat sprays and lozenges for sore throats to capsules and tinctures for general immune support, topical creams and ointments for wounds and skin conditions, even specialized toothpastes and mouthwashes for oral health, reflecting its documented benefits across these various applications.
Which brings us back to that fascinating variability we discussed earlier. This huge range of applications, combined with the fact that propolis's composition and biological activity can vary so significantly based on its geographical origin, the season, the specific plants the bees visited. It raises an important question as we look forward, doesn't it?
It certainly does. The challenge and the opportunity lie in that complexity.
As research continues to unravel the precise compounds responsible for specific effects, maybe identifying unique markers for different propolis types, and discovering the optimal applications for each. Just imagine the untapped potential still locked within this humble bee product. What more might bee glue reveal about health, wellness, and maybe even new therapeutic strategies in the years to come?
It's a question that keeps researchers busy and highlights why this ancient remedy continues to be such a hot topic in modern science. There's likely much more to discover.